So very
Interesting.
straightforward. With Conductor, we've helped this company reduce operational costs by basically helping the centralized team create an easier way to scale and leverage Kafka from their banking
Right.
services, their payment technologies, their website, right? Everything that where Kafka is feeding things. We've helped provide real-time insights around detection and prevention of fraud. So essentially giving
Mm,
the ability to identify fraudulent transactions,
anomalous
like
looking. Yep.
authorization, exactly, and then feed that in without creating false positives or degradation of
Mm.
services.
Hey, and welcome to the Momentum Podcast, the show where FinTech meets AI. I'm your host, Stan Altshuller, investor, founder, and advisor to some of the world's top hedge funds, asset managers, and data companies. Each week, we'll dive into practical AI strategies to help you cut through the noise, beat data overload, build smarter workflows, and turn your ideas into results. We'll explore everything from AI tools for your daily workflows to building data-driven growth engines for your organizations. Here, you'll discover what's next in finance and how to stay ahead of the curve with AI. Let's dive in. All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Momentum Podcast, where we break down how top builders and operators in fintech are tackling today's biggest and most vexing challenges. So today I'm joined by Quentin. He's SVP from Conductor, which is a tech company that provides data infrastructure to the financial sector and retail companies. So we're going to dig into what he's building, how his clients are using the platform to solve their challenges, and where he sees the fintech industry going in general with all this evolution that's going on in technology. So Quentin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. So let's just dive right in here. And maybe you can give us like a quick background, quick snapshot of your journey, how you've landed at Conductor and what you've been doing up to now, and then cycle right into what you're currently working on.
Absolutely. So, my name is Quentin Packard. I grew up here in New York. I've spent 25 plus years dating myself a bit in the tech industry, working at very large publicly traded companies and also some really great, exciting startups. I have the privilege of serving and helping lead and scale go-to-market functions, across sales, marketing, field engineering, customer success. And I work at an incredible company called Conductor, where we help customers secure, scale, and transform their real-time streaming data into greater insights, profits, and better experiences for both their customers and their employees and partners.
That's fantastic interview. Thank you for that. So if you don't mind, let's dig in. I'm just really curious about the types of clients. You mentioned real-time data. What type of data are we talking about? And what are like kind of the big challenges with that sort of data? I can imagine it's pretty big data. And how are they using the platform to solve it?
Yeah, so talking specifically about Kafka, right, streaming technologies. I think
Can you
in
dive in? What is Kafka, just for my viewers who are not familiar?
Oh, so absolutely. So Kafka is a type of operational data. Kafka has been around since 2000, probably about 15 years now. It is a distributed event streaming platform. It's a message broker, basically, that helps build real-time data pipelines and streaming applications. So it's an open source project that was started again about 12, 15 years ago. It is widely adopted by most enterprise companies. Confluent is the leading provider and market player in the space. And it essentially enables people to decouple and scale the handling of highly ephemeral, highly fast moving, flowing data between producers and consumers of that data.
So we're talking about like real-time pricing data. Like who's the end user of this data?
Yeah, so it's really used everywhere. If you look at like it came out of Netflix, so
Hmm.
everything you see when you get recommendations, whether it's
Wow.
the Netflix, best show to watch, right, based on what you've
Yep.
seen, that's running through a Kafka service. The ability to give just-in-time inventory changes, willingness to pay on promotions, customer sentiment feedback loops. Most of that runs through real-time streaming services, and Kafka is, the default right solution and service for that today.
And how about the ads, those ads that are being served up to folks as they're like surfing the internet?
Yeah, so user behavior, website activity, right? Activity tracking concepts. That's all done, not everywhere, but for a big part, that's done via Kafka, right? So the capturing of what you're doing and then feeding you back the next right thing or the next recommendation, that's done through real-time streaming services. And Kafka is that foundational tool that allows that interface of data recommendations and, again, whether it's a inventory product, supply chain thing, or it's a website user activity based engagement, that's usually done through Kafka.
No, it's really interesting. If you could make this real for our viewers and bring it back down to like a solid example they can wrap their heads around. So if you can talk about maybe a Conductor and a real client of yours without mentioning names or anything like that,
Cool.
just give us like the type of company and what, how were they able to use the platform to get their to get their data delivered?
Great one. So, financial services, as you know, is one of our biggest industries. So, we
Yep.
have one example, one of the leading FinServe companies in Europe. Highly leverages, as many do, they have a need to leverage secure real time data for a plethora of things. So, today they use real time data processing to power millions of contactless transactions, instant payments. And Kafka is basically the cornerstone that enables the data movement across the different systems, the different regions, and then obviously to the end state wherever it is going, whether it's a server and a rec system of record, or it's obviously being served up to a user, right, to a customer. The problem that they were running into, as this obviously gets to the millions, you can
Yep.
imagine scale, compliance,
Right.
operational bottlenecks,
Right.
collaboration, all these things, they feel easy. But when you start to work in the finance world, as I'm sure as you know, you have standards across different things, whether it's the
Yes.
credit card companies, so like Visa, MasterCard, the regional data sovereignty laws like GDPR. So there's
Yep.
no one size fits all checkbox to do all of this at scale and within an auditable, compliant way. So what
Hmm.
they were using, they were trying to build something on their own. They came to Conductor to help
Yep.
essentially democratize the use of Kafka, drive greater adoption because it, again, was a cornerstone technology, but at the
Yes.
same time create strict controls over the access, the who is the able to see and use. So the think of role-based access controls and robust security controls so that the right people could see the right information but not see the information they're not supposed to see. And then certain data that is not supposed to leave regions, not only can they ensure that it doesn't, but they can guarantee that without obviously having to put a lot of manual task and toil or duplicate the data. So obviously that gets very expensive. And then the other thing was
Interesting.
around ownership visibility. So they wanted to
Mm.
accelerate the development and the time of taking all of that great input, the flow metrics and the feedback loops, and bringing out whether it's better recommendations, better UXs, better designs. So without creating a bottleneck or too much constriction, they wanted to accelerate the time to innovation, shorten the time to market to bring out whether it's
Right.
A/B testing or whether it was
Right.
updates of new promotions that they were going to run in different regions. They wanted to not lose that speed to market, but at the same time not create the wild wild west from security. So very
Interesting.
straightforward. With Conductor, we've helped this company reduce operational costs by basically helping the centralized team create an easier way to scale and leverage Kafka from their banking
Right.
services, their payment technologies, their website, right? Everything that where Kafka is feeding things. We've helped provide real-time insights around detection and prevention of fraud. So essentially giving
Mm.
the ability to identify fraudulent transactions,
Anomalous
right,
looking. Yep.
authorization, exactly, and then feed that in without creating false positives or degradation of
Mm.
services. And then we've helped them accelerate the time to migration to real time infrastructure by creating an
Mhm.
abstraction layer that sits on the top of everything they're doing. and basically making it more seamless and easier for people to go from the traditional way with legacy systems to then move on to leveraging Kafka while not having to be an expert of it, right? We simplify that whole experience. So we've helped save money, mitigate operational manual task and toil, mitigate cyber risk, but also operational risk, and then accelerate the time to value of who's both using and obviously the inputs, the innovations that are coming out of those teams.
Now, is your model more, here's my technology platform, plug in and use it, or like a consultative approach? I really got to go in and understand your business, your challenges, and I'm going to maybe deploy a combination of my own engineers and my own consultants and the technology on top.
Yeah, great question. So let me take a step back. Our software is deployed because of think of the regulation, the compliance, the challenges. We have take our software and deploy it in your own environment. So
Internal.
it's not a cloud, it's not SaaS, right? You
Yep.
take our software, it gets deployed in a container, Docker
It's
image, right? An
like
instrument.
behind your firewall. This is kind of like
Correct.
your
Correct.
client's own environment. That's
Correct.
great.
So it goes in your world, which I think now more than ever,
It's important. Mhm.
because of AI, because of
Yes.
costs,
Yes.
security, right? The
Yes.
pendulum is shifting a bit. So it gets deployed there. We then work with incredible partners, regional system integrators,
Uh,
global system integrators, because again, we fit into an ecosystem, right? That helps integrate the technology into workflows. We support our products and softwares via traditional support 24/7, right, models. But again, we work with partners to work on the integration, the migration, and then we build adoption plans to help streamline. And then the last part of your question,
yeah.
some of it depends on the use case. So if
Right.
you're doing an encryption use case versus a self-service, right, trying to scale and use case, we work with very different teams. There's different deployment plans, but it really gets customized to the problem, where you are in your data maturity journey, and then the types of use cases, what you're trying to obviously do, whether it's with us or anyone, right? But what it is you're trying to do with Kafka. Hope that answers your
Yeah.
question.
It's super interesting. I mean, I think it's a great niche, and it sounds like you're really partnering with these companies to solve real world problems. How does like this whole evolution, right? This, or you could call it revolution with AI, right? The complete ubiquity of now LLMs and Gen AI, agentic AI workflows. How does this change kind of the way you implement these solutions for your clients? How does it change the workflow? How do the clients themselves view it? Is it like a good thing? Is it a threat? Like, and this is kind of like an open-ended question. I want to get at just a general feeling, and I get really different answers from people that I ask. But is this helping or hurting, and how are you using it, if at all?
I believe it's absolutely helping, but it's
Okay.
super early, right? If you think
Okay.
about like a 10-year, think about how long did it take from the iPhone to get invented and rolled
Right.
out to being ubiquitously used, and then really creating mobile transformation value, right? We didn't
Yeah.
all of a sudden get an iPhone and
Right.
everything became better, right?
Right.
So what I believe is we're probably in like year 1.5 of this transformation with both Gen AI and agentic AI still in very early days, but
Yeah.
absolutely moving from early adopter, interesting as a niche to
Right.
now every company I
Like.
talk to has a strategy,
Yeah.
projects they're trying to work on, and for a lot of cases, looking at kind of internal low-hanging fruit use cases, whether it's customer success,
Yes.
whether it is troubleshooting and support, but taking some of the manual task and toil things that a hallucination or an
Right.
inaccuracy won't create a lawsuit for.
Right.
And I
Right.
think there's a lot of reasons, but if you look at fintech, regulatory complexity and compliance is getting harder, not easier.
Yes.
Regulatory costs and risk increase is expanding with product diversification, geo diversification, things like tariffs. So the problem without AI has become bigger. Cybersecurity, data privacy is a extension of
Yeah.
that, but basically, fintech apps, fintech companies, they're one of the most attractive targets outside of insurance and healthcare for
Right.
cybersecurity criminals, due to
Yeah.
the
That
just
they have data.
data,
Yep.
exactly right. It's about how sensitive data is and what it can be used for. So, companies have been
Interesting.
investing heavily in encryption, tokenization, anomaly detection, breach responses, right? Like those worlds aren't going to go anywhere, and AI is clearly making it better on some side. That's exposing and creating more risk for things to be even more dangerous. And then I think the other big one is around trust. I was at the Gartner conference, I forget, a couple months ago now. I was at Google Next. I go to all these events, and the concept around trusted data, trusted engagements, trusted recommendations, better prompts, better chunking of things that are going in. A lot of that comes down to data quality and trusted data and retention, right? How are we looking at what's being backed up into these things and feeding these things? And so I think we're in a tipping point where the controls, the quality, the accuracy, the shift left of how do I make sure things are better before they get into a data lake or get into an LLM is at a whole other level, than I've ever seen in my career. So if I look at those types of challenges, I think the opportunities, what I'm hearing from people a lot around embed the concept of embedded finance. So embedding financial services into non-financial platforms. Shopify does this, right? Uber
Right.
is a great example of this. You see these blurring of the worlds, and while it's great for the consumer, it's even better for the adversary because now you have this end-to-end stream that you can.
One point that you can get everything.
Correct. So embedded finance, I think, is at another tipping point, but is also creating a lot of uncertainty, risk, and concern. The other one, which
Interesting.
we spoke about, is AI and generative, right? AI more specifically. And for me on this is more personalized experiences. So like personalized financial coaching, better, more controlled fraud detection,
Right.
underwriting, customer support. We mentioned this already, right? The concept of AI driven agentic robo advisors and
Right.
agentic experiences where better financial planning or better financial advice if you say to go for a home equity line or go for some source of capital, getting back recommendations of
Like
credit.
hyper personalized
Correct.
recommendations, knowing
Correct.
the context of you.
Correct. So instead
Yeah.
of having to go through 30 days of
Right.
troubleshooting and chasing, bringing back a guided engagement around my current situation, my background, what I'm trying to
Right.
do, and the risks versus the options. That's
Right.
super interesting, but
Right.
very early still, right? Like, and then the other one I think is, the and it's still early, but financial inclusion in underserved markets, right? I love
Yeah. Yep.
talking about this, right? Whether it's global or local, the ability for the underbanked populations with mobile, right, where we started, micro lending, cross border, sovereignty, but the ability to add value. That's really interesting. So apps like Wise, Remelty, they're kind of starting to connect the worlds of where people haven't had these things or had these opportunities. And again, with a phone and an
Yep.
agentic AI experience, they can be served in a cost-effective way
Right.
with hopefully less risk, right? And in a much more sustainable, ethical way. So that concept of sustainable, ethical financing, building, I think helping the underserved. I hope, right? I believe in the good of things. I hope that's one of the next big changes that we start to see.
So this is excellent. And if you had a megaphone right now, and you can help, your clients or your prospects, folks that would be using Conductor to solve some of their problems, what would you tell them to like? What would you tell them to do to avoid these really big challenges? Like you hear all these incredibly massive failures of like big companies trying to go into AI agentic workflow, and then the chatbot screws up and gets them in trouble, and they abandon the whole thing altogether and they
Yeah.
revert back to the past. What would be your advice, to sum all of this up for folks to go ahead and try and undertake a project that transforms them digitally, but still have these guardrails to make sure they at least lower the chances of this big catastrophic failure?
Right. Well, one is network and listen to some of the experts. Right, there are some
Yeah.
incredible authors on these topics. People that have worked at Google, worked at Microsoft, now at OpenAI, at some of these incredible companies. And these topics, while are at the new inflection point, they're not exactly that new, right? ML and AI ops concepts are not. They've been around a while, right? The IBM was talking about
Oh
autonomous
yeah.
engagements in the 70s, right? Like
Yep.
this isn't.
Decades ago.
Yeah, so like I think part of it is it's kind of what's new is really interesting, but at the same time it's not. We're not talking like quantum computing is still super early, super explorative, that hasn't really been solved yet. Whereas a lot of these things are really fundamental energy problems, compute problems, right? That now have to be packaged into governed, secure ways. So I guess what I'm saying is read, ask, get network, be curious about what people are trying to do and have been doing, and don't don't assume the worst. Right? It's easy to say that. I think the other one is look at and I give this advice all the time. Look at where your developers are having productivity delays. Where are their bottlenecks? Where's their
Good.
manual task and toil that if you were to address and automate, would give a better quality of life to your developers, would give a better quality of life to the people that are really the lifeblood of building your company, right? Your engineers, your AI engineers, your software, your security engineers, right? Look at where they're struggling. And then the other side,
Yes. Love
working
that.
backwards, right? Working from market opportunities. I think it's like, hey, where are customers struggling, whether it's top of funnel, the engagement, the awareness, the interest, understanding, activation of prospects into your business? Where are existing customers struggling with adoption, whether it's deployment, onboarding, getting things into production? So from pilot to prod, right, environments. Where are there things where both your internal people that are the lifeblood of your company, or they are the backbone of your business, and then your customers are struggling with things. And if you can solve for those two things with even one or two use cases, what's going to happen is you're going to start to find
Yes.
things that are going to return time and money, which matters. You're going to create a better, active, happy engagement with your employees and your customers. And then you're going to move on to like, wow, if we've already been able to do this, what if we could solve this bigger thing? And so
Yep.
if I were to summarize that, it's don't chase, like I keep hearing like
Yeah.
this, go to this low value use case. Like, I don't know about that. Like I would focus on big rocks, but narrow your big rocks down to a couple key populations, right? Whether it's again your developer productivity, your customer engineer people, and then your top prospect customers. Like go solve some big meaty rocks and then think about how you supplement that, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
that would be my philosophy for it.
I absolutely love that. This is a recurring theme with some of the thought leaders that I'm talking to right now is like, listen, now is a time of opportunity. So the challenges, the problems that you're having, just like the one you mentioned with some productivity issues with your developers or your data entry people, whatever these big issues you've had, even if they're legacy issues, don't just say this is how it's always been done.
That's right.
This is your opportunity to revisit and to use technology to create an opportunity out of that challenge.
That's
So I
exactly.
absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing it. And thank you for your time here on the Momentum Podcast. This has been really awesome. Quentin, thank you so much. Any closing remarks or any last tidbits of insight for our viewers?
No, I think I love what you're doing, right? Thank you for bringing people together to talk about things I think that matter a lot. And I would encourage people, right? Don't stop dreaming, don't stop learning. Dare to be bold. Go try to solve and go think about solving the big rock challenges. That's what's going to help change the world, make things better for everybody, and that's what's going to take us from the very early days on some of these things and get us to the next innovation curve. So yeah, thank you for what you're doing.
Now is the time. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
All the best. Thanks for tuning into Momentum. If you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to follow the show and share it with your network. This helps us a lot. To explore how AI can help your firm, visit acadia.im. I'm Stan Altshuller, and I'll see you next week. with more practical insights to help turn data into growth and decisions into results with the help of AI.